Welcome to Fika's Focus. Voices leading change.
In this Fill the Gap, we're continuing our conversation around the pathways to school. And in terms of supporting the sector, we're really discussing in this segment about kind of our expectation around supporting a child into the school setting and their success. So I think I don't want to go as far as just tying it to parental expectation. I probably want to
societal.
Yes, I think I want to because my experience in teaching internationally showed that actually it's got nothing to do with what the parents of New Zealand deem as success. It was actually quite a worldwide phenomena, and I don't know where its origins live, but it's certainly worth unpacking. So when we talk about traditional societal expectations of a child who has just turned 5 and entering into a school situation, and you've taught new entrants?
Yeah.
I've taught new entrants, you've taught new entrants, we've been guilty of this as probably ourselves. Just talk to me, your understanding, Rose, about what general societal expectations live for a child who's turned 5 going into schools.
I think a lot of those expectations are tied to literacy and numeracy. The expectation that a child can have knowledge and understanding of the alphabet and numbers and the ability to write their name, at least at the minimum, their name, if not all the letters in the alphabet, and them being able to sit at the mat and follow instructions and do essentially what they are told to do is, I think, the traditional expectation of a 5-year-old when they walk through those doors.
Do you think Elon Musk was like that?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I'd be very surprised if he was.
I even wonder if Jacinda Ardern or Barack Obama or any, Richie McCaw, like, I don't know if they were kids that followed that traditional mould. Yeah. In my time in that new entrant space, I saw the necessity of understanding that stuff based on what I was testing kids for.
Yes.
And
when you do a massive bout of testing as a 5-year-old and new entrant teacher, you get the benchmark.
Yes.
Well, you used to. I don't know what happens
Well,
now.
I'm pretty sure they still do.
But you used to, and then you do it again at 6 years old.
Yes, 6 years.
And you compare.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think, so let's just talk to that a wee bit in terms of the role in that space. Because I don't want to shortcut early childhood, the sector, in terms of saying we don't do that stuff. Because I actually think that's unfair as well. We just do it in the pace and time of the child.
Yes, absolutely. And I think we provide them with numeracy and literacy rich environments. There are stories, there are opportunities to write, there are opportunities to explore letter formation in different ways than sitting down and writing your name. There are ways to recognise the alphabet, to enjoy storytelling, like telling a story and then it being captured in a way by your kayak or to share. There's so much literacy and numeracy around them that they are being exposed to those concepts. And society, do they recognise, or in your experience, Rose, do you think that they recognise the value that you're discussing? To be honest, I think actually quite a few, I would say that, lots of them, because we all understand as parents, like reading a book to our child before bed is beneficial for them. And we know that that's because it helps them with that development and understanding of literacy as well as the relationship that builds with
the closeness.
All that kind of stuff. So I do think that children of young parents, which is probably where I would get most of my information from around that, is they do see the value in the availability of books to be explored, creating books with children about a story that they have created. Like they see the value in that, and they I think that their understanding of exposure in those areas is it's growing.
Yeah, so going back to what our role is in that space when we're talking about supporting the sector, some of the deliberate actions we take as a sector to enhance the dare I say, academic abilities of a child, they are way less subtle, no, more subtle, because it doesn't look like your traditional sit down,
copy word,
yes, handwrite this out,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. So just talk us through some examples of where we might be utilising deliberate approaches to enhance a literacy skill.
So I can talk about my experience in the Ngāhi room at Pet Beach, and simple things like using children's names for, like, they created placemats and it had their name as part of their placemat. And at Kai time, it was their responsibility to find their name, with the support, obviously, of their friends or their teachers, to go and find their name. And the progress within like a week of some children that had no idea what their name looked like to being able to find their placemat with their name and find it confidently was huge. And I think that's not because they knew that their name started with a C, and, you know, it's because they understood the symbolic, the letters were like made up and it looked like this. Not that they understood what each letter was, but, you know, that's the beginning of that concept, that actually that represents something. That represents my name. And then from there you can go, what letters are in your name, and then...
So you've tied it to a context.
Yeah. And then flow on from that was then we could see that some of our children were very... I think especially little like preschoolers, they love their name because it's theirs. It's no one else's, it's theirs, and it's like so important to them. So then transferring that to, like, we had pegs with letters on it, and I used their place names, and they were pegging the letters, finding the letters on the peg and pegging it to their name, and they could see, they could find each individual letter, and they knew that actually I have 5 letters in my name. Not like, you know, so they've gone from the concept of recognizing a word to actually, a word's made up of letters, and this is how many letters are in my name. Like, that's, and those are very small building blocks, but that's the concept of literacy.
But
we
let's
have
also,
letters that represent sounds that make up words that is a message.
But let's also discuss, does knowing your name, knowing the alphabet, knowing to count to 10 guarantee a successful school career?
Knowing it, as a 5-year-old?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
In your experience, what were the real... I know I've got some very clear parameters or some real clear criteria that almost I could almost guess on the level of success
That
the
a
child would have in that...
In a school context.
Yeah, in the vacuum of a school context.
Yeah, well, it's broader than literacy and numeracy. It's their social skills, their communication skills, their emotional competence, their self-help skills, their fine motor skills, their gross motor skills. There's so many foundation skills that I think need to be present before they are able to. I hate the word curriculum ready, but that's often used, before they are curriculum ready.
Yes.
Because I just
Which is a curriculum that they don't agree on.
Yeah.
They've got no say over.
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of adults that have decided that
and I think,
this is what will make them successful.
Yeah. And so I think it's like, for me, a big one is you want those kids to be curious, and like you want them to go in wanting to learn. Because that's the first, I think, for me, the forefront of a successful learner is someone who is got the mindset that, cool, what can I learn today? Or they're curious about things and they want to dive in. And
so the last session we spoke about that it was the responsibility, as according to tamariki, to prepare the child for each stage.
Yes.
And we discussed in the macro of early childhood settings, there's the micro stages of infant, toddler, preschooler. And in that scenario where we're completely connected, if the child is with us from baby to going to school, we actually get deep insight into that whole continuum of educational experience within us.
From a 6-month-old to
a 5-year, or sometimes 5.5, depending on what goes on. In all those pieces, we do not discuss any level of academia.
No.
It is all tied to fundamental development, cognitive development, and actually what you're talking about, their curiosity. We need to, we're trying to fire
those
that up.
attributes of those underlying, not skills.
I believe it is an attribute. I agree with you on attribute, because what we're trying to do is, are we firing that child up to turn up and go, actually, I can't wait to get there and go.
I'm excited to see what I'm going to learn today.
Yes.
Yeah.
What am I? And what
And
do
also,
I get to question?
Like, cool, they're curious, but are they critical? Are they thinking like, but why? You know, they're not just passively receiving this information. They're like yesterday I had this beautiful conversation this is an example of a child who's very close to going to school. And she looked up in the sky and she said, why is the moon out? It's the daytime. And I was just like, oh my God, I love, like, this is, like, you're ready for school. You're ready for school. Like, in that moment, I knew she was ready for school. But then the conversations that we had around the moon, and she said, maybe it's lost.
Yes.
And then the other thing was
tied to its own. It's tied to its own, to the
she
child's
said,
own
I think she's
understanding.
looking for the stars. The moon's looking for the stars. And then we talked about the tamariki stars, and it went down this whole thing. And then the clouds were actually moving and covered the moon. And then there was a discussion around whether the moon was moving, or were the clouds moving, or were we moving? Like, so that was curiosity.
That's literally it in a nutshell, right?
And I was like, you're ready.
So
You're 5 next week and you're ready.
So let's talk about this. We get let's just say we've got 2 different children. We've got the child who's confident, curious, but cannot write their name.
Yeah.
Cannot recognise their name, or maybe might recognise in the early stages of their name, certainly first letter, maybe, and can kind of count to 10 verbally, but can't recognise all the numbers.
Yeah.
Versus we have a child who's not so curious, but is pretty good in that space of understanding, right, I know the numbers 1 to 10, I can recognise them, I can write them, I can write
The
my
whole
name,
alphabet,
I can do this, I can write this out, I can, I can copy words down from things like that. I can hold a pencil. In your experience, which child had a greater probability of success moving through their school career?
The curious kid.
Why?
Because...
Why was that your experience?
So I think the experience... I actually had twins that came to me in a new entrant setting, and one was a curious...
Interesting.
And one was a curious-natured child who could not even hold a pencil. And then a child who knew every letter of the alphabet. But...
Fascinating.
But
were they boys or girls?
Both boys.
Both boys?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And so I think, and in terms of success, it was like...
Sorry, who was the oldest?
Oh, I don't know.
Fascinating. Karen.
Yeah, I actually don't know. And I found it really interesting because the progress in that first year, because one of them came and already knew the entire alphabet. When I did that 5-year-old observation and then their 6-year-old observation, no progress, because he knew them as soon as he walked in the door. His brother, progress was huge. He knew 0, and he progressed massively. He, with his curious nature, had gone on to learn the alphabet.
Let's ask the question that maybe some people might ask, and this could be confronting. Was it because of you as a teacher?
No, I don't. I hope
for
not.
both things, for both scenarios.
Yeah. No, I hope not. No, but the child who I measured, so the first twin that knew all the alphabet letters, he progressed in his social skills throughout that year, but there's no test to measure that.
That's cool. Yeah.
You don't do a test to go and observe a child and see if they can now communicate with their peers,
Make friends,
if they can, like seek help when they need it,
not fire up and hurt someone.
So there's no measurability. There's no test
metric.
But his brother could do that when he walked in the door.
So,
so he was more. They were both successful, but on paper, when I had to report it, I know what child looked more successful over the year, even though they both were.
So when challenging societal norms, dare I say, what is our sector doing that advocates for what we actually do for children?
What are we doing as a sector to advocate for?
Correct. Because you and I have had the privilege of working in both spaces. Me personally, no one will convince me now that early childhood.
It's not important.
It's the most important, actually.
It's the foundation for
Like
the rest of your life.
I can, in my experience now, and which is now coming up 5 years, I have had the privilege of seeing the impact that we can have on a young child's mind and how they carry themselves,
Yeah.
their mana, when they're going into new spaces,
Yeah.
right? Like, I can now vouch in
Yeah.
that space because we've now got a group of children going through in that space. What I want to know, what I want to understand is, what are we doing in the sector, or is the sector doing, that allows what we're discussing about these real confident, capable children to go into their next phase of learning?
So we obviously, like, the first thing is the children are showing those skills. So that's the first thing that we're doing, right? We've got some children that are walking into school confident, curious, open to learning, and they have the social and emotional competence behind that to help them. But I also think that what we are doing is, I've had conversations with families that are worried that their child can't hold a pencil. And I think just having those conversations, like, this is how we are supporting them with that, and it doesn't necessarily look like sitting down and holding a pencil for 20 minutes a day. So it's broadening people's understanding of the foundations behind.
Yes, people need to understand.
So it's
that
those conversations.
We need to.
Yeah.
It is entirely our responsibility to help children understand, why do you need to hold a pencil?
Yeah.
What does holding a pencil allow me to do?
Yeah.
Oh, it allows me to express myself.
Yeah.
It allows me to write down or
Communicate.
draw,
Yeah.
or it actually I can draw you a picture of what went on in my day.
Yeah.
You know, I get all Frankie's seesaw updates, and they're always like, she tells stories that I don't remember that we've done, but we've done them. And
love
she's
that.
like, yeah, you know, her writing is representative of something along the lines, oh, we went to the beach and my dad built me a sandcastle and things like that. She gets to tell you, tell us what's important to her in that
What
time.
stuck with her,
Is she
yeah.
communicating about going to the beach and building a sandcastle with her dad? No, I don't believe she is. I believe she is talking about spending time with her dad.
Yeah.
That's what we are always trying to equip children with, is the opportunity to really share what's on their mind.
Yeah.
But my fear is that if we don't explain the why behind a lot of things, like why, you know, we don't even need to tell that child who I believe I know who you're talking about. Well, we don't need to tell her actually why the moon's out in the day. There's no need to. Let's let her wander a wee bit more.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, let's let her think, yeah, maybe it is because
Yeah.
she's trying to find the stars.
Yeah.
And I get that, because the stars are really bright. And how come she can't find them now? Like, you know, maybe she's had a bad sleep, you
Yeah.
know? That's why
Yeah.
she's up. I think...
And it was actually really cute hearing the other contributions from her friends.
I bet.
Who
What were they?
Like, it's not actually the moon, it's just a circle cloud. Like, there were so many different opinions. And then the conversations that allowed. And I was not going to jump in and be like, actually, it's because the earth is on an angle. Like, nah, I'm not going to do that. I was just like, wow, cool.
Yes.
Yeah. And then what do you think? And then they contributed their ideas and...
And then eventually they'll start to clarify their thinking.
Yeah.
Eventually they'll start to, because our tupuna, they made sense of it through story,
Yeah.
through communication. It's far easier to discuss phenomena through storytelling.
Yeah.
You know, how was New Zealand made? Well,
Yeah.
one of the cousins, he
Pulled
fished
it
it
up.
up. And he was my cousin.
With his grandfather's jawbone.
Yeah, you know, like, I think this is what I'm trying to get to, I guess, and the stark difference in that I don't ever want a child to come out of a scenario where we entirely encourage them to dream and be curious and be just absolutely like in awe and wonderment about what's going on around them, then shove them into a scenario where actually, no, there is a black and white.
Yeah.
The black and white is that the moon is on an axis
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and that's why. Or the stars, no, the stars aren't hiding. It's just the blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. Actually, we don't need to destroy that
No,
in children.
no.
And in fact, that is the real criminal act that I can see in space, is that we have to shut them down about what really
Yeah.
they're trying to They're actually
make
living,
sense of their world.
They're making
Yeah.
sense of their world.
Yeah.
So I think with that, this is where the sector, this is where I'm so proud of what ECE does. We absolutely do not shut down their
No.
level of wonderment, curiosity, and awe around what's going on.
I think the thing that I've learned as an ECE teacher coming from primary school into ECE is how much more, like, I don't know, when you see the world through those children's eyes, what an amazing world it is.
Yeah, but
You
hang
know?
on. No, the crazy thing is we've lost that.
Yeah. Through potentially
societal,
the school system.
Yes, well, that's my experience.
Because that's like the biggest thing with me is I remember being challenged as a primary school teacher when I said I can't draw. And one of my lecturers said, "Who told you that?" And I don't know who told me that, but I learnt that about myself throughout my time at school. Whereas you go into a preschool room and every child will at some point in the day probably produce a piece of artwork that they are so proud of.
Yes.
And they all know that they can do it.
And I can bet you right now the people listening to this can probably tell you that same teacher that did the same thing.
Yeah.
They can,
Yeah.
and vice versa.
Because you have to do art as one of your, like, in year 9, you have to do all the things before you choose what you do,
Yes.
I did art, probably was like, that didn't meet
you're
the
not
brief.
very good, man.
Yeah, that didn't meet the
Yeah.
brief. I'm going to mark that as below.
Yes.
So, okay, I'm not an artist.
Yes, and how many stories are there of
Yeah.
people like
Yeah.
Michael Jordan not making his NBA, his high school basketball
Yeah.
team, Mariah Carey being kicked off the choir, things like that. There's so many stories of
Yeah.
that. The great thing about those people is that they actually just got back on the
Yeah.
on the bus
So that's what we need to do. We need
Yes.
to teach those children
to get back on the
to get
bus.
back up. Yeah.
Yeah.
To not be like, okay, I'm not going to do that again.
Oh, really? Oh, your opinion for
Yeah.
someone that I'm only going to know for
Yeah,
1 year
yeah,
really is
yeah.
going to change my life.
Yeah.
Agreed. And I think that is such the beauty of ECE is actually we do have a group of kids that they're just like, I don't care what you say because I'm just going to read it. I'm going to write every day, and I don't know what it says, but I tell it says a story
I
to
know
me.
what it says.
You know,
Yeah.
I remember this.
It's like children when they start to learn to talk.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah, we don't
like-
shut them down,
No,
right?
like
We're
Gus,
not like, hey,
my
that's
child
wrong.
Gus, he's got his own language at the moment, and he knows exactly what he is telling us and saying. And I'm not going to be like,
Yo, man. Hey,
you pronounced that wrong.
yeah.
Stop.
Stop,
Like,
1-year-old
yeah.
child.
You
Yeah.
can't talk. Yeah, no. So it's like that's what ECE is. ECE is to me. It's creating these learners that are curious, that are confident, that are
Live in wonder
able.
and
They
awe.
want to take a risk. They want to fail. Like, you know,
They're not worried about
not-
people's opinions.
Nah. They want to try something, get it wrong, and learn from it.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they want to be able to do that with others.
Yeah.
And they want to be able to
And come back tomorrow and do it again.
yeah. And they're gonna just soak it all up, and they're gonna progress and learn about who they are
Yeah.
in their own way.
Okay.
That is my dream.
That is the dream. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rose.
It's okay.